What made my hand shake wasn't just reading about a woman whose daughter-in-law had screamed useless burden at her during her 70th birthday dinner. It was that I was reading it while sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., exactly 12 hours after my own daughter-in-law, Jennifer, had called me those exact same words at my birthday dinner. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But here's what Jennifer didn't know when she humiliated me in front of my son and grandchildren. I wasn't just some helpless old woman she could discard. I was the woman who controlled the joint bank account that her entire lifestyle depended on. The account she thought she had cleverly manipulated me into giving her access to. Let me tell you how I went from birthday victim to the one holding all the financial cards. It all started 18 months ago when my son David called me in tears from Seattle. "Mom, we're drowning," he said, his voice cracking with desperation. "Jennifer's boutique is failing, the mortgage is behind, and with the twins starting private school, I don't know what we're going to do." I had been living peacefully in my small coastal town of Mendocino, California, enjoying my book club, weekly bridge games, and the occasional wine tasting trip to Napa. At 70, after nursing my late husband Robert through cancer and rebuilding my life from grief, I thought my days of financial rescuing were behind me. Robert had left me comfortable, but not wealthy. His engineering consulting business had provided well during our 45 years of marriage, and between his life insurance and our careful investments, I had enough to live modestly but securely. My little craftsman house overlooking the Pacific cost me almost nothing. We'd paid it off years ago, and my monthly expenses were minimal. Book club potlucks, bridge games at the community center, and the occasional dinner out at the local seafood restaurant were about as extravagant as my lifestyle got. But hearing David's voice break, the same voice that used to call me when he had nightmares as a child, I felt my protective instincts kick in immediately. David was my only child, born when I was 35 after years of fertility struggles. Robert and I had poured everything into raising him, and watching him build his own family had been one of my greatest joys. "How much do you need, sweetheart?" I asked, already mentally calculating how much I could access from Robert's well-managed investment portfolio. "Mom, we need about $60,000 to catch up on everything and keep the boutique afloat," David said quietly. "Jennifer is convinced the business will turn around, she just needs more time. And the twins, they're finally settled in their school. My twin granddaughters, Sophia and Olivia, both 8 years old. I'd already missed too much of their childhood living in a different state. Robert's illness had kept me in California for the last 3 years of his life, and the grief afterward had made travel difficult. The twins barely knew me, and I ached thinking about them losing their stability, their school, their friends. "Don't worry, David. Family takes care of family," I heard myself saying. David had met Jennifer 7 years ago at a marketing conference in Portland. She was beautiful, ambitious, and had big dreams of owning her own high-end boutique. At first, I was thrilled that my somewhat introverted son had found someone so dynamic and confident. Jennifer seemed to bring out a more adventurous side in David, and when they married and had the twins, I thought our family was complete. But over the years, I'd noticed something about Jennifer. She had a way of making every conversation about herself, her dreams, her struggles. When I'd visit, she'd monopolize the conversation with stories about difficult customers, unreliable suppliers, and her vision for expanding the boutique. David would sit quietly, occasionally nodding, but rarely contributing to the conversation. I'd chalked it up to personality differences. Jennifer was extroverted where David was reserved. She was ambitious where he was content. I figured that's what made their marriage work. They balanced each other out. But now, hearing about their financial crisis, I wondered if there was more to the story. When I offered to wire the money, Jennifer had a different suggestion. "Dorothy," she said during our phone call, her voice honey-sweet with practiced charm, "you're so generous. but wire transfers are complicated and expensive. What if we set up a joint checking account? That way, you can transfer money whenever we need it, and it'll be easier for everyone. She made it sound so logical, so convenient. Plus, she added, this way, if anything ever happens to you, God forbid, David and I can help manage things immediately. It's really the smartest arrangement for everyone. The suggestion caught me off guard. I'd been planning to simply send a check or wire transfer, but Jennifer's reasoning seemed sound. At 70, I was generally healthy but not naive about mortality. Having someone trustworthy with account access did seem practical. I'll need to think about it, I said. Of course, Jennifer replied quickly. I just think it's the most efficient way to handle things. And Dorothy, I want you to know how much this means to us. David has been so stressed about money lately, and knowing his mother is there to help, it's going to make such a difference. Over the next few days, Jennifer called twice more to check on my decision. Not pushy exactly, but persistent. She'd mention how David was losing sleep over the bills, how the twins were asking why Daddy seemed so worried all the time, how the boutique was so close to turning the corner. I just want to make this as easy as possible for you, Dorothy, she'd say. The last thing we want is for you to have to worry about managing multiple transactions or keeping track of what we need when. Finally, I agreed. It did seem simpler, and I trusted Jennifer. She was David's wife, the mother of my grandchildren. Surely she wouldn't misuse that trust. Within a week, I had transferred $75,000 into our new joint account and given Jennifer the debit card and online access. I kept the primary account information and could monitor everything online, but she had full access to use the funds as needed. Mom, you're a lifesaver, David had said when I told him the arrangement was complete. Jennifer is already working on a plan to pay you back within the year. That was the beginning of what I thought would be a temporary financial bridge to help my son's family through a rough patch. I had no idea it was the first step toward the most humiliating birthday of my life. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Jennifer would send me thank you texts when she used the account. Used $500 for groceries today. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Or, paid the electric bill. You're such a blessing. The boutique seemed to be improving, and Jennifer would call with updates about new inventory and increasing sales. She'd tell me about celebrity clients who'd shopped there, about getting featured in a local magazine, about plans to expand to a second location. David sounded less stressed during our weekly calls, and the twins were thriving in their school. When I spoke to them on FaceTime, they were bubbly and excited, telling me about their art classes and soccer practice. But then I started noticing something odd when I checked the account balance online. The withdrawals were getting larger and more frequent, but the thank you texts had stopped coming. $800 at a high-end restaurant I'd never heard of. Hummer $200 at a spa resort in Napa Valley. $2,500 at a luxury department store. $3,000 cash withdrawal from an ATM in San Francisco. When I called Jennifer to ask about these expenses, she was ready with explanations. Oh, the restaurant charge was a business dinner with potential investors, she'd say smoothly. We're trying to secure funding for the expansion, so I had to wine and dine some important people. The spa was a business retreat, networking with other boutique owners, you know. And that department store purchase was inventory for the boutique. We got an amazing deal on designer pieces. Her explanations were plausible, delivered with confidence, and I wanted to believe her. After all, she was my daughter-in-law, the mother of my grandchildren. Surely she wouldn't lie to me about something so important. But as the months went on, the expenses grew more extravagant, and Jennifer's explanations became more elaborate. A $5,000 charge at a high-end furniture store was new displays for the boutique. A $2,800 charge at a luxury hotel in San Francisco was a buyer's conference. A $2,500 charge at a high-end salon was professional styling for media appearances. When I gently suggested that maybe she should run larger expenses by me first, her tone changed. "Dorothy, I thought we agreed this was for the family's needs," she said, a slight edge creeping into her voice. "I'm working 18-hour days trying to save this business. I don't have time to call and ask permission every time I need to buy something. I understand, Jennifer, but some of these charges seem what? Dorothy, are you questioning my judgment? Because I'm the one actually running a business here. I think I know what expenses are necessary." "I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm just concerned about how quickly the money is being spent." "Concerned?" "Dorothy, you said you wanted to help us. This is what help looks like. If you're going to second-guess every decision I make, maybe we should have just taken a loan from the bank instead." The manipulation was subtle, but effective. She was making me feel guilty for monitoring my own money, for caring about how my life savings was being spent. That conversation happened in March. By June, I had noticed that $45,000 of the original $75,000 was gone, but I hadn't seen any evidence that the boutique was actually improving. When I tried to visit Seattle to see the shop and spend time with the twins, Jennifer was always ready with an excuse. "This weekend isn't good. We're doing inventory," she'd say. Or, "The twins have birthday parties," or, "David is working overtime on a big project." I was starting to feel like I was being managed rather than included in the family I was supporting. Every phone call felt scripted, like Jennifer was giving me just enough information to keep me satisfied without actually letting me into their lives. The breaking point came in July, when I discovered a $8,000 charge at a luxury resort in the Caribbean. When I called Jennifer about it, she didn't even try to explain it as a business expense. "Dorothy," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled irritation, "we need to talk about your attitude." "My attitude? You've been questioning every expense, calling constantly, and frankly, it's creating stress for David and the girls. They can sense the tension." I was speechless. I had been calling once a week and had only questioned a few obviously personal expenses. "Jennifer, I'm just trying to understand how the money is being used. It's my life savings." "Your life savings that's sitting in an account doing nothing while your son's family struggles," she interrupted. "Dorothy, I need you to trust me. I'm trying to build something here, and your constant micromanaging is making it impossible." "I'm not micromanaging. You are, and it needs to stop. Either you trust us to handle this appropriately, or maybe we need to reconsider this arrangement." The threat was subtle but clear. Support us without question, or lose access to your son and grandchildren. "Jennifer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not trying to control anything. I just want to make sure the money is being used for its intended purpose." "Its intended purpose?" "Dorothy, its intended purpose is to help our family. That's exactly what we're doing. Just because you don't understand the complexities of running a business doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong." I spent that night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had become the villain in the story of my own generosity. How had asking reasonable questions about my own money become micromanaging? How had wanting to see my grandchildren become creating stress? But I was about to discover that Jennifer's manipulation was far more sophisticated than I could have imagined. The truth would come out 3 months later, on my 70th birthday, in the most humiliating way possible. My 70th birthday had started so beautifully. I woke up in my Mendocino cottage to the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains that Robert had teased me about but secretly loved. For a moment, lying in our old 4-poster bed, I could almost pretend he was still there, that we'd spend the day walking the headlands and sharing a bottle of wine at sunset like we used to do on my birthdays. But this year was different. This year, for the first time in 18 months, David and Jennifer were bringing the twins down from Seattle to celebrate with me. When David had called 2 weeks earlier to suggest the visit, I'd been so surprised and thrilled that I'd actually cried. Mom, Jennifer, and I were talking, and we realized we've been so focused on the business that we haven't been giving you the attention you deserve, David had said, his voice warm with what sounded like genuine affection. We want to make your 70th really special. Jennifer had even gotten on the phone, bubbling with enthusiasm about their plans. Dorothy, we're going to spoil you rotten. I've already made reservations at that seafood place you love overlooking the harbor, and I found the most adorable matching dresses for the twins to wear. They're going to look like little angels. After months of feeling like I was being pushed away, this sudden warmth felt like a miracle. Maybe Jennifer's hostility had just been stress from the struggling business. Maybe now that things were improving, she'd been sending me increasingly optimistic updates about the boutique's performance. She was ready to rebuild our relationship. I spent the week before their visit preparing like I was hosting royalty. I deep-cleaned every corner of the house, bought fresh flowers for every room, and planned activities the twins would enjoy. I researched the tide pools at McCarricher State Park, stocked up on art supplies for Sophia, who loved to draw, and even bought a junior soccer net for Olivia, who was apparently quite the athlete according to David. Most importantly, I went shopping for birthday outfits for the girls. I wanted them to have something special to remember this visit, something that would make them feel beautiful and loved. At a boutique in Fort Bragg, I found 2 identical but colorful sundresses with hand-embroidered flowers, exactly the kind of thing I imagined they'd love. They cost more than I usually spent on clothing, but seeing my granddaughters' faces would be worth every penny. I also bought David a new fishing rod. He'd mentioned wanting to try surf fishing during their visit, and for Jennifer, I chose a beautiful cashmere scarf from a local artisan shop. Despite our recent tensions, I wanted to show her that I valued her as part of our family. The morning of my birthday, I was up at dawn, baking the girls' favorite chocolate chip cookies and preparing a special breakfast casserole that could be reheated when they arrived. I arranged the birthday gifts on the dining room table and set out the good china for our celebratory lunch. When I heard David's SUV pull into my gravel driveway at noon, my heart practically leaped out of my chest. I smoothed my blue dress, the one Robert always said brought out my eyes, and hurried to the front door. "Grandma Dorothy!" Sophia and Olivia shrieked in unison, racing toward me with arms outstretched. For a moment, all the hurt and confusion of the past months melted away as I hugged my granddaughters, breathing in their little girl scent of strawberry shampoo and sunshine. "Happy birthday, Mom," David said, giving me a warm embrace. He looked tired, I noticed, with new lines around his eyes and gray threading through his brown hair. But he was smiling genuinely, and when he stepped back to look at me, his expression was filled with the kind of love I remembered from his childhood. Jennifer emerged from the passenger seat looking absolutely stunning in a flowing white dress and oversized sunglasses, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the 4-hour drive. She approached with a bright smile and air-kissed my cheeks in her usual fashion. "Dorothy, you look wonderful, 70 years young," she exclaimed, her voice pitched with enthusiasm that seemed almost too bright. "The girls have been so excited about this trip. They made you something special in the car, didn't you, girls?" Sophia shyly handed me a handmade card covered in glitter and stickers. "We drew you a picture of your house in the ocean," she said, softly. And Olivia wrote a poem. Olivia, always the more outgoing twin, bounced on her toes. It's called "My Grandma is the Best," and it rhymes. Well, mostly. Daddy helped with some of the words. My eyes filled with tears as I read their sweet creation. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Love, connection, the simple joy of being together. We spent the afternoon exploring the tide pools, the twins squealing with delight as they discovered sea anemones and hermit crabs. David and I walked behind them, sharing stories and laughing at their enthusiastic commentary on every creature they found. Jennifer took endless photos with her expensive camera, directing the girls to pose in various configurations against the rocky coastline. "This is going to make amazing content for my social media," she said, reviewing the photos on her camera screen. "The lighting is just perfect here. Very authentic coastal grandmother vibes." I found her comment a bit odd. I hadn't realized. She posted about our family online, but I was too happy to let it bother me. For the first time in months, I felt truly included in their lives. Back at the house, while the twins played in the backyard and David dozed on the porch swing, Jennifer and I prepared dinner together. She seemed relaxed and chatty, telling me stories about the boutique's recent successes and her plans for expansion. "Things have really turned around, Dorothy," she said as she arranged flowers in a vase I'd set out. "We actually had our best month ever in September. I'm starting to think about opening a second location, maybe in Portland." "That's wonderful, Jennifer. I'm so proud of how hard you've worked." "Well, I couldn't have done it without your support," she said, giving me what seemed like a genuinely grateful smile. "David and I have been talking about how to properly thank you. We want to do something really special." For dinner, we went to the Harbor View restaurant, my favorite seafood place perched on the bluffs overlooking Mendocino Bay. I'd called ahead to request their best table, and the hostess seated us by the windows just as the sun was beginning to set over the Pacific. The twins were on their best behavior, using their napkins properly and saying please and thank you to the waitress. David regaled us with funny stories from his job at the engineering firm, and even Jennifer seemed relaxed and genuine, asking me about my book club friends and bridge games. When the waitress brought out a small chocolate cake with a single candle, I'd quietly arranged this surprise when I made the reservation, the girls sang happy birthday with such enthusiasm that other diners joined in and applauded. "Make a wish, Grandma," Olivia commanded. I closed my eyes and wished for more moments exactly like this one, surrounded by family, feeling loved and valued and connected. When I opened them and blew out the candle, everyone cheered. "What did you wish for?" Sophia asked. "If I tell you, it won't come true," I said, ruffling her hair. "But I will say it's already starting to happen." As we walked back to the car in the gathering dusk, David put his arm around my shoulders. "Mom, this has been perfect, just like the birthdays when I was a kid." "I'm so glad you all came," I said, meaning every word. "This has been the best birthday I've had in years." But even as I said it, I noticed Jennifer checking her phone and frowning at whatever she saw on the screen. When she caught me looking, she quickly put the phone away and smiled brightly. "Should we head back for presents and cake?" she asked cheerfully. Back at the house, I served my homemade chocolate chip cookies while the family gathered in the living room for gift opening. The twins presented their handmade card again, along with a painted rock Sophia had decorated with flowers and a friendship bracelet Olivia had woven during the car ride. David gave me a beautiful coffee table book about coastal California lighthouses. "I thought you might like the pictures even if you've already visited most of these places," he said. Jennifer's gift was last, a small wrapped box that felt expensive. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a heart pendant. "It's from a local artisan in Seattle," she said. "I thought it would go perfectly with your style." I was touched by the thoughtfulness of all their gifts, but more than anything, I was grateful for their presence. As we sat around the living room, the twins curled up against their parents on the sofa while I settled into Robert's old recliner. I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced since his death. "This has been such a wonderful day," I said, looking around at their faces in the soft lamplight. "Thank you all for making an old lady feel so special." "You're not old, Grandma," Sophia protested. "You're just experienced." We all laughed at her serious tone, and David reached over to squeeze my hand. "Mom, there's something Jennifer and I want to talk to you about," he said, his expression growing more serious. "Oh?" I felt a flutter of nervousness. After such a perfect day, I wasn't sure I wanted anything to change or become complicated. Jennifer leaned forward, her hands clasped in her lap. "Dorothy, We've been thinking a lot about everything you've done for us, and we want to make sure you know how grateful we are. You don't need to thank me again. Seeing you all happy and successful is thanks enough. But that's just it, David said. We want to formalize our appreciation. Jennifer has been doing amazing work with the boutique. It's really taken off, in ways we never expected. Jennifer's eyes were bright with excitement. The cash flow has completely turned around, Dorothy. We're not just breaking even anymore. We're actually profitable. And with the expansion plans... That's wonderful, I said, though I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading. So we've been thinking, Jennifer continued, about how unfair it is that you're just sitting on that money in the joint account when it could be working for all of us. I felt the first prickle of unease. What do you mean? David shifted uncomfortably. Well, Mom, the thing is, we'd like to invest the remaining balance in expanding the boutique. Jennifer's found the perfect location for a second store, and with your money as startup capital, we could really build something amazing. It would be like you're a partner in the business, Jennifer added quickly. We'd set up a formal partnership agreement and you'd get a percentage of all profits going forward. It's a much better return than just having the money sit in a checking account earning practically nothing. I looked back and forth between them, trying to process what they were asking. You want to use the rest of the money to invest in the boutique? It's not using it, Dorothy. It's investing it, Jennifer corrected, her voice taking on the patient tone she might use with a child. This is an opportunity to turn that $30,000 into real wealth. $30,000? I repeated. Jennifer, there should be about $45,000 left in that account. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. David looked at Jennifer with a confused expression, and Jennifer's bright smile faltered for just a moment before reasserting itself. Oh, right, yes, she said quickly. I meant 45. I was thinking about the initial investment amount for the new location. Anyway, the point is, this is a chance to really make that money work for you instead of just sitting there. But I was stuck on her mistake. How could she confuse the balance in an account she accessed regularly? Unless she knew exactly how much was in there and had just revealed something she hadn't meant to. Jennifer, I said slowly, how much have you spent from the account in the last month? Spent? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Dorothy, I don't think of it as spending. It's all been business investments and family necessities. Everything I told you about. But how much? David was looking between us with growing confusion. What are you talking about? Jennifer, you said the business expenses had slowed down since things improved. Jennifer's face flushed slightly. They have slowed down, David. Dorothy's just... She likes to keep very close track of every penny. Which is fine, of course, but sometimes I think she forgets that building a business requires ongoing investment. I'm not forgetting anything, I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. I'm asking a simple question about my own money. The twins, who had been quietly playing with their new art supplies on the coffee table, looked up with concern. Sophia's eyes were wide, and Olivia had stopped coloring. Is everything okay? Sophia asked in a small voice. Everything's fine, sweetheart, David said quickly, but his tone was tight. The adults are just talking about boring money stuff. Jennifer stood up abruptly. You know what? This conversation can wait. It's Dorothy's birthday, and we shouldn't be discussing business matters. But you brought it up, I pointed out. Because I thought you'd be excited about the opportunity, Jennifer snapped, then seemed to catch herself. I mean, because I thought it would be nice to give you something positive to think about. A way to be more involved in our success. I am involved. I've been funding it for 18 months. Funding it? Jennifer's voice rose slightly. Dorothy, we've never asked you for anything we didn't absolutely need, and everything we've used has been for the benefit of the family. Then you won't mind showing me the receipts, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the twins had stopped their activities and were staring at us with worried expressions. Receipts? Jennifer repeated, as if I'd suggested something unreasonable. For the business expenses. If everything has been legitimate business costs, you'll have receipts and records, right? David looked uncomfortable. Mom, I'm sure Jennifer keeps good records for tax purposes, but of course I keep good records, Jennifer interrupted. I just don't carry them around with me on vacation. Dorothy, I have to say, this level of scrutiny is starting to feel a bit insulting. Insulting? Yes, insulting. Here we are, trying to include you in our business success, trying to give you an opportunity to grow your money, and you're treating me like some kind of criminal. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. I'm not treating you like a criminal. I'm asking reasonable questions about my own money. Your money? Jennifer's mask was slipping now, her voice taking on an edge I'd heard during our phone calls but never in person. Dorothy, that money is in a joint account for family purposes. It's not your money anymore. It's family money. That's not how joint accounts work, Jennifer, isn't it? Because I was under the impression that when you set up that account, you were making a commitment to trust us with family decisions. David looked bewildered. Jennifer, what are you talking about? Of course it's still Mom's money. She was helping us through a rough patch, not signing over her life savings. Jennifer whirled around to face him. David, your mother has been questioning every single expense for months. Every business dinner, every piece of inventory, every necessary cost. Do you know how demoralizing it is to have someone constantly looking over your shoulder, implying that you're stealing from them? I never said you were stealing, I protested. You didn't have to say it. Your tone, your questions, your constant monitoring. It's clear what you think of me. Olivia started to cry softly. Why is everyone yelling? David immediately went to comfort her, shooting Jennifer a warning look. We're not yelling, sweetheart. We're just having a discussion. But the damage was done. The warm, loving atmosphere of my birthday celebration had evaporated, replaced by tension and accusations. I looked around the room, at David trying to comfort a crying child, at Sophia clutching her coloring book with frightened eyes, at Jennifer standing in the middle of my living room with her hands on her hips like she was the wronged party. Maybe we should all just take a break, I said quietly. It's been a long day and everyone's tired. That's a good idea, David said gratefully. We can talk about this tomorrow when everyone's had some sleep. But Jennifer wasn't done. No, David, I think we need to settle this right now. Your mother clearly has some concerns about how we've been handling things, and I think we should address them directly. Jennifer, David warned. What? I'm tired of walking on eggshells around this. Dorothy, if you want to micromanage every penny we spend, then maybe we should just close that account and find another way to handle our business finances. Maybe we should, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Jennifer blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Fine, then we will. Fine. Girls, David said, standing up with Olivia in his arms, why don't you go brush your teeth and get ready for bed? Grandma has that nice guest room all set up for you. As the twins reluctantly gathered their things and headed upstairs, David turned to both of us with an expression I recognized from his childhood, the look he got when he was trying to keep peace between arguing adults. This is ridiculous, he said. You're both being stubborn about something that can easily be worked out. Your mother is the one being stubborn, Jennifer said. I've tried to be patient with her paranoia, but I can't keep pretending it's normal to interrogate every business decision we make. It's not paranoia to want to understand how my money is being spent, I said. Your money, your money, your money, Jennifer muttered. God, Dorothy, do you hear yourself? It's like you think we're employees instead of family. And that's when it happened, the moment that would replay in my mind for weeks afterward. Jennifer turned to face me fully, her expression harder than I'd ever seen it, and said the words that would change everything between us. You know what your problem is, Dorothy. You're a lonely old woman who thinks she can buy her way into our lives. You think that because you wave some money around, we owe you constant gratitude and detailed explanations for every choice we make. But here's the truth. We don't need your money anymore. The business is successful now, and we don't need to keep pretending that your constant interference is helpful. I felt like I'd been slapped. Jennifer, no, let me finish. You sit in this little house in the middle of nowhere, with no life of your own, and you try to control ours. You monitor our bank account like we're children with an allowance. You demand visits and attention and constant updates because you have nothing else going on. And frankly, it's exhausting. Jennifer, stop, David said sharply. Why should I stop? Someone needs to say this. Dorothy, you're 70 years old. Maybe. It's time you found your own life instead of trying to manage ours. The room fell completely silent. I could hear the old house settling around us, the distant sound of waves against the cliffs, my own heart beating too fast in my chest. When I finally found my voice, it came out steady and quiet. I think you should leave. What? David looked shocked. I think you should pack your things and leave. Tonight. Mom, come on. Jennifer didn't mean… Yes, she did. I looked directly at Jennifer, who was staring at me with a mixture of defiance and what might have been regret. She meant every word, and I think it's best if you all go home. Jennifer lifted her chin. Fine, we'll leave. But don't expect us to come running back when you change your mind. As they gathered their things and woke the confused twins, I stood in my living room surrounded by the remnants of what I'd thought was a perfect birthday. Cookie crumbs on the coffee table, wilted flowers in their vase, the silver necklace Jennifer had given me lying forgotten on the side table. But it wasn't until I was alone, long after their taillights had disappeared down the dark coastal highway, that Jennifer's words really sank in. She was right about one thing. I was lonely. But I wasn't the one who had created that loneliness. They had, with their lies and manipulation and emotional distance. And now I knew exactly what they thought of me. A lonely old woman trying to buy love with money. Well, if that's how they saw me, maybe it was time to show them what this lonely old woman was really capable of. The next morning, I would begin to discover just how deep their deception went. And by the end of the week, Jennifer would learn that underestimating a 70-year-old woman with nothing left to lose was a very, very expensive mistake. The morning after they left, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My beautiful 70th birthday had ended with my son's family storming out in the middle of the night, leaving me alone with the echo of Jennifer's cruel words ringing in my ears. But as I sat in my kitchen with my morning coffee, staring at the leftover birthday cake on the counter, I felt something unexpected settling over me. Clarity. For the first time in 18 months, I wasn't making excuses for anyone's behavior. I wasn't trying to convince myself that Jennifer's hostility was just stress, or that David's distance was just being busy. The mask had finally come off, and I had seen exactly what my daughter-in-law thought of me. A lonely old woman trying to buy her way into their lives. Well, if that's what she believed, then maybe it was time I acted like the shrewd old woman she clearly thought I was dealing with. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the joint checking account for the first time in weeks. What I saw made my stomach drop. The balance was $23,147. When I'd last checked 3 weeks ago, there had been over $40,000. In 3 weeks, Jennifer had spent almost $17,000, and I had no idea on what. I clicked through to the transaction history, and what I found made my hands shake with rage. The charges weren't just frequent, they were brazen. In the past month alone, there had been $3,200 at a luxury spa resort in Napa Valley, $2,800 at Nordstrom, $1,500 at a high-end restaurant in Seattle, $2,400 at Pottery Barn, $1,200 at Saks Fifth Avenue, $900 at a wine boutique, $1,800 at Williams Sonoma, $750 at Anthropology, $1,400 at West Elmond. Dozens of smaller charges, $200 here, $300 there, at expensive coffee shops, boutique stores, and restaurants I'd never heard of. This wasn't business expenses. This was someone living a luxury lifestyle on my dime. But what made my blood boil wasn't just the amount. It was the dates. The $3,200 spa charge had been made the day before they came to visit me for my birthday. Jennifer had spent my money, pampering herself at an expensive resort, then driven down to Mendocino to tell me what a financial burden I was being. The Nordstrom charge was from 2 days ago, the morning after our fight. While I was waking up alone on my birthday, surrounded by the wreckage of what I'd thought was a reconciliation, Jennifer was out shopping for expensive clothes with my money. I printed out 3 months of statements and spread them across my dining room table. As I went through each charge with a highlighter, marking the obvious personal expenses in yellow, a pattern emerged that made me sick to my stomach. Jennifer had been systematically draining the account while feeding me lies about business expenses and gradual improvement. The business dinner charges were at romantic restaurants on weekend evenings, clearly date nights, not investor meetings. The inventory purchases were at high-end department stores and home goods shops, not wholesale clothing suppliers. Even worse, I found charges for things that directly contradicted what she'd told me. She'd claimed the boutique was struggling to afford new displays, but there were multiple charges at furniture stores for what appeared to be home furnishings. She'd said they couldn't afford family vacations, but there were hotel charges in San Francisco, Portland, and even one in Vancouver. As I sat there surrounded by evidence of 18 months of systematic theft, my phone rang. The caller ID showed David's number, and for a moment I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. "Hi, Mom." David's voice was subdued, apologetic. I wanted to call and apologize for last night. Jennifer was out of line with some of the things she said. Some of the things? Okay, most of the things. She's been under a lot of stress with the boutique, but that's no excuse for talking to you like that. I looked down at the bank statement spread across my table. David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Of course. How much do you know about how Jennifer has been using the money from our joint account? There was a long pause. What do you mean? I mean, do you know what she's been spending it on? Do you review the expenses with her? Another pause, longer this time. Mom, I trust Jennifer to handle the business finances. She's much better with that stuff than I am. So you don't know that she spent over $3,000 at a spa resort the day before coming to my birthday? Silence. David? $3,000? His voice was quiet, confused. Mom, that can't be right. Jennifer said the business expenses had been minimal lately. David, I'm looking at the bank statements right now. In the past month alone, she's spent almost $17,000. None of it appears to be business-related. That's impossible. The boutique has been doing better. She wouldn't... He stopped mid-sentence. Wouldn't what? Mom, can you email me those statements? I think there might be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, David. Your wife has been using my money to fund a luxury lifestyle while telling me it was for business expenses. Mom, let me talk to Jennifer and figure out what's going on. There has to be an explanation. The explanation is that she's been lying to both of us. Don't say that. Jennifer wouldn't steal from you, from us. The denial in his voice was heartbreaking. Even confronted with evidence, he couldn't accept what his wife had been doing. David, I'm going to close that account today. Mom, please, don't do anything hasty. Let me talk to Jennifer first. I'm sure we can work this out. The time for working things out was before she called me a useless burden and stormed out of my house. She didn't mean that. She was upset and said things she didn't mean. She meant every word, David. And honestly, I'm glad she finally said what she really thinks. At least now I know where I stand. After I hung up, I drove into Fort Bragg to the bank where I'd opened the joint account 18 months earlier. Maria Santos, the personal banker who had helped me set it up, greeted me with a warm smile that faded when she saw my expression. "Mrs. Patterson, is everything all right? I need to freeze the joint account I opened with my daughter-in-law," I said, placing the stack of printed statements on her desk. "And I need to understand my options for recovering money that was spent without my knowledge or consent." Maria's expression grew serious as she pulled up my account information. "I see there has been significant activity on this account. Can you tell me what's happened?" I gave her a brief overview of the situation, the original purpose of the account, Jennifer's lies about business expenses, and the discovery of what appeared to be personal spending on my money. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you some questions for our records. When you opened this joint account, did you give the other account holder permission to use the funds for any purpose?" I gave her permission to use the money for business expenses and family necessities, not for personal luxury purchases. "And do you have any documentation of what the money was supposed to be used for?" I showed her my phone, where I still had text messages from Jennifer describing various business expenses that I now knew were lies. Maria nodded gravely. "Mrs. Patterson, what you're describing sounds like it could constitute financial elder abuse. The bank has protocols for these situations." Elder abuse? When someone in a position of trust systematically misuses an elderly person's finances for their own benefit, yes, especially when deception is involved. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. I was a victim of elder abuse. At 70 years old, I had been financially exploited by my own daughter-in-law. What are my options? First, we'll place an immediate freeze on the account, which means no more withdrawals can be made without your explicit written consent. Second, I'm going to connect you with our financial crimes specialist who can help you document everything for potential legal action. Legal action? Mrs. Patterson, if what you're telling me is accurate, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. This isn't just a family dispute, it's potentially criminal fraud. An hour later, I walked out of the bank with a frozen account, a thick folder of documentation, and the business card of a financial crimes specialist who would be calling me within 24 hours. I also had something I hadn't expected, the phone number of a lawyer who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. Back home, I sat in Robert's old recliner and called my sister Patricia in Sacramento. Patricia was 3 years younger than me, a retired high school principal who had always been the more practical and decisive of the two of us. "Dorothy, how was your birthday? I was hoping you'd call yesterday." I told her everything, the whole story, from the initial loan request 18 months ago to Jennifer's cruel words the night before. When I finished, the silence on the other end was deafening. "That manipulative little bitch," Patricia finally said, her voice tight with fury. "Dorothy, please tell me you're not making excuses for her." "I'm not. For the first time in 18 months, I'm seeing the situation clearly." "Good, because what she did to you isn't just cruel, it's criminal. You need to prosecute her for theft. Patricia, she's David's wife, the mother of my grandchildren. She's a thief who took advantage of your generosity and then had the audacity to call you names when you questioned her spending. Dorothy, if you don't hold her accountable, she'll do this to someone else. David thinks there's been some misunderstanding." Of course he does. He's been married to a manipulator for 7 years. She's probably been lying to him about everything. That afternoon, Patricia drove up from Sacramento. She took one look at the bank statement spread across my dining room table, and her face went white with rage. $73,000. She said after adding up all the questionable charges. "Dorothy, she's stolen $73,000 from you. It's not all theft. Some of it was legitimate." "No, Dorothy, none of it was legitimate. You gave her money for business, expenses, and family emergencies. Spa treatments and designer clothes are not business expenses. Patricia helped me organize the evidence into categories: obvious personal expenses, suspicious charges that were likely personal, and the few charges that might actually have been business-related. The ratio was sobering. Less than 10% of the money appeared to have been used for its intended purpose. "Dorothy, look at this," Patricia said, pointing to a series of charges. "She spent $800 at a high-end baby store in July. Did David and Jennifer have another baby?" "No, the twins are 8 years old." "Then what did she buy at a baby store?" I had no idea. But as we continued going through the statements, more mysteries emerged. Charges at stores we couldn't identify. Cash withdrawals that didn't correspond to any explanation Jennifer had given me. And a pattern of spending that suggested she was living far beyond what a struggling boutique owner should be able to afford. "We need to hire a private investigator," Patricia said. "A private investigator?" "Dorothy, you've been lied to for 18 months. How do you know anything Jennifer has told you is true? How do you know the boutique even exists?" The thought hadn't occurred to me, but now that Patricia said it, I realized I'd never actually seen the boutique. Every time I'd suggested visiting, Jennifer had an excuse. What if the whole business was a fiction? "Patricia, that's crazy. David works. They have a house, the twins are in school. All of which could be funded by David's salary and your money. Dorothy, what if there is no boutique? What if this whole thing has been an elaborate con from the beginning?" That evening, Patricia and I drove to the public library in Fort Bragg to use their computers for research. We searched for Jennifer's boutique in Seattle, Jennifer Brooks' boutique, and every variation we could think of. We found nothing. We searched business directories, Yelp reviews, social media pages. Anything that would prove the boutique existed. Still nothing. "Maybe she operates under a different name," I said, grasping for explanations. "What's the exact name of the business, as Jennifer told it to you?" I tried to remember. She always just called it the boutique, or my shop. I don't think she ever told me the actual business name. Patricia gave me a look. "Dorothy, legitimate businesses have names. They have websites, business licenses, tax records. If we can't find any trace of this boutique online, it's because it doesn't exist." We spent another hour searching, using every keyword we could think of. Finally, Patricia pulled up the Seattle business license database. "What's Jennifer's maiden name?" "Morrison." Patricia searched for business licenses under Jennifer Morrison, Jennifer Brooks, and every combination she could think of. The search returned 0 results. "Dorothy," Patricia said quietly, "there is no boutique. There never was a boutique. Jennifer has been stealing your money for 18 months while feeding you lies about a business that doesn't exist." I stared at the computer screen, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. But the updates she gave me, the stories about customers and inventory, all lies. "Dorothy, your daughter-in-law is a professional con artist." The drive back to my house was silent. I couldn't process what we'd discovered. For 18 months, I had been funding Jennifer's luxury lifestyle while she fed me elaborate lies about a fictional business. Every phone call, every update, every explanation. For expenses, all of it had been carefully crafted deception. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the realization that David must have known. He might not have known the details, but he had to know there was no boutique. He lived with Jennifer. He would have seen the lack of inventory, the absence of business calls, the fact that she wasn't actually working. My own son had been complicit in stealing from me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed, all the times my instincts had told me something was wrong, but I'd pushed those feelings aside, because I wanted to believe in family loyalty. Jennifer's reluctance to let me visit, her vague explanations about the business, the way she always deflected when I asked specific questions about customers or suppliers, David's passivity during our conversations about money, the expensive, purchases that never quite made sense as business expenses. I had been so desperate to help my family, so eager to be needed and valued, that I had ignored every red flag and warning sign. At 3 a.m., I got up and made myself a cup of tea. Sitting at my kitchen table in the dark, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I pulled out the business card the bank had given me and left a voicemail for the financial crimes specialist, telling her I needed to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. Then I called the elder abuse attorney and left another message. Jennifer thought she was dealing with a lonely old woman who could be manipulated and discarded. She was about to learn that this 70-year-old had more fight left in her than she could possibly imagine. The next morning, David called again. "Mom, I talked to Jennifer about the bank statements. She said there's been some confusion, but she can explain everything." "There's no confusion, David. And there's nothing to explain. I know about the boutique." "What about the boutique?" "I know it doesn't exist. I know Jennifer has been lying to both of us for 18 months. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. "David?" "Mom, that's not... She wouldn't..." "David, there is no boutique, no business license, no website, no online presence. Your wife has been stealing from me while feeding me lies about a business that never existed. That's impossible." "Is it? When was the last time you saw inventory in your house? When was the last time Jennifer took a business call in front of you? When was the last time she actually went to work at this supposed boutique?" Another long silence. "David, you knew, didn't you? Maybe not all the details, but you knew she wasn't really running a business. Mom, please, this is my wife we're talking about, the mother of my children. She's also a thief who has stolen over $70,000 from your mother." "Don't say that. It's the truth. David, I've frozen the account. No more money will be coming out of it. And I've contacted a lawyer and the police." "The police?" "Mom, you can't involve the police in a family matter. This stopped being a family matter when Jennifer decided to steal from me and then call me a useless burden for questioning it. Mom, please think about what you're doing. Think about the girls. Do you really want to destroy their family over money?" And there it was, the same manipulation Jennifer had used, now coming from my own son, using my grandchildren as emotional weapons to make me feel guilty for holding a thief accountable. "David, I'm not destroying anything. Jennifer did that when she chose to steal from me, and you're enabling her by asking me to look the other way. I'm asking you to think about family. I am thinking about family. I'm thinking about how my family has treated me for 18 months. I'm thinking about how the people I love and trust decided I was an easy mark for financial abuse. Mom, David, I love you. I love Sophia and Olivia, but I will not continue to enable theft and lies just to keep the peace. Jennifer made her choices. Now she can live with the consequences." I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear any more excuses, any more manipulation, any more attempts to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. That afternoon, I met with Detective Sarah Chen from the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office Financial Crimes Unit. After reviewing my evidence for 2 hours, she leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "Mrs. Patterson, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of elder financial abuse I've seen. The documentation is excellent, the pattern is obvious, and the amounts involved make this a felony. What happens now? I'll be forwarding this case to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for criminal charges. Based on what you've shown me, your daughter-in-law is looking at multiple felony counts of elder abuse, theft, and fraud. And my son?" Detective Chen's expression softened. "That depends on what we discover about his level of involvement. If he genuinely didn't know about the fake business, he might not face charges. But if we find evidence that he was actively participating in the deception..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of standing up for myself. For 70 years, I had been the peacekeeper, the one who absorbed other people's bad behavior to keep the family together. I had enabled my late husband's poor financial decisions, overlooked my son's selfishness, and excused my daughter-in-law's cruelty, all in the name of family harmony. Well, I was done being a doormat. Jennifer wanted to play hardball. Fine. She was about to discover that this useless burden had more power than she'd ever imagined. And if my son chose to stand by a thief instead of his mother, then he would learn that actions have consequences, even for family. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win. The retaliation began 3 days after I froze the account. I was having my morning coffee on the porch, watching the fog roll in from the Pacific, when my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, came rushing over from Next Door. She was still in her bathrobe, her face flushed with excitement and concern. "Dorothy, dear, there are some people here asking questions about you," she said breathlessly. "They said they're from Adult Protective Services, and they wanted to know if I'd noticed any signs of confusion or memory problems." My blood ran cold. Adult Protective Services? They had official-looking badges and everything. They asked if you'd been making strange financial decisions lately, if you seemed paranoid or hostile toward family members. I told them you were sharp as a tack and to mind their own business, but Dorothy, why would they be asking about you? I knew exactly why. Jennifer wasn't just going to accept the frozen account and police investigation quietly. She was going to fight back, and her weapon of choice was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. "Mrs. Henderson, if anyone else comes around asking questions about me, please don't answer them and call me immediately." "Of course, dear." "But, Dorothy, is everything all right? You look frightened." I gave her a brief explanation of the situation, enough so she'd understand why people might be trying to discredit me, but not so much that I was gossiping about family. Business. Mrs. Henderson's expression hardened. "That woman is trying to make you look crazy so she can keep stealing from you? Dorothy, that's despicable." After she left, I called Detective Chen immediately. "Mrs. Patterson, this is unfortunately common in financial elder abuse cases," she said. "When adult children or relatives realize they're facing criminal charges, they often try to claim the victim is mentally incompetent and doesn't understand what they're reporting. Can they actually have me declared incompetent? Not easily, but they can make your life difficult with false reports and investigations. Do you have any medical documentation of your mental capacity?" "I had a full physical and cognitive assessment just 6 months ago. My doctor said I was in excellent health for my age." "Good. Keep that documentation handy. And Mrs. Patterson, I'd recommend you consider getting a restraining order against your daughter-in-law. This kind of harassment often escalates." That afternoon, I drove to my doctor's office in Fort Bragg and requested copies of all my recent medical records, including the cognitive assessment I'd had in March. Dr. Williams, who'd been my physician for 15 years, was outraged when I explained why I needed the documentation. "Dorothy, your cognitive function is excellent. Your memory is better than most people half your age. Anyone suggesting otherwise is either lying or delusional. Could you put that in writing?" "Absolutely. And Dorothy, if you need me to testify to your competency in court, I'll be happy to do so." Armed with my medical records, I drove to the office of Margaret Walsh, the elder abuse attorney the bank had recommended. Margaret was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in protecting elderly clients from financial exploitation. "Mrs. Patterson, what you're experiencing is classic victim intimidation," she said after reviewing my documentation. "Your daughter-in-law is trying to discredit you before you can testify against her. It's actually evidence of consciousness, of guilt. Innocent people don't usually try to have their accusers declared insane. What can we do about it?" "Several things. First, we'll file for a temporary restraining order preventing Jennifer from contacting you directly or having others contact you on her behalf. Second, we'll send a cease and desist letter to any agencies that received false reports about your mental capacity. Third, We'll document every instance of harassment for the criminal case. What about David? He's been calling constantly, trying to get me to drop the charges. That could constitute witness intimidation, which is also a crime. Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared for the possibility that your son could also face criminal charges if he's been helping his wife? I thought about David's desperate phone calls, his pleas to think about family, his insistence that there must be some misunderstanding. 3 days ago, I would have done anything to protect him. Now, I realized that protecting him from the consequences of his choices wasn't love, it was enabling. Yes, I said. I'm prepared for that. Good, because based on what you've told me, it's unlikely your son was completely ignorant of his wife's activities. When someone lives with a person for 7 years, they usually know if that person actually has a job or runs a business. That evening, Patricia called with disturbing news. She'd been doing her own investigation into Jennifer and David's background, and what she'd found was troubling. Dorothy, I think you need to sit down for this. What did you find? I searched public records in Seattle, and Jennifer and David's house isn't just mortgaged, it's mortgaged to the hilt. They borrowed against the equity twice in the past 2 years. Based on the loan amounts, they owe more than the house is worth. What does that mean? It means they're drowning in debt. The house is underwater, and they probably can't afford the payments. Dorothy, your money wasn't just funding Jennifer's shopping sprees, it was probably keeping them from losing their home. The implications hit me like a physical blow. So, when Jennifer said they were behind on the mortgage, that part was probably true. But instead of using your money to catch up on payments, she was using it to maintain her lifestyle while they fell further behind. What about David's job? He's still employed, but Dorothy, I found something else. David filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago, before they got married. His credit was destroyed by student loans and credit card debt. Jennifer's name isn't on most of their major debts, which suggests she was trying to protect her credit rating. Why would that matter? Because if you're planning to commit financial fraud, you want to keep your credit clean so you can open accounts and get loans. Dorothy, I think Jennifer targeted your son specifically because he was financially vulnerable. She needed someone with access to family money. I felt sick thinking about it. Had Jennifer married David just to get access to me? Had their entire relationship been a long con designed to eventually defraud me? Patricia, there's something else I need to tell. David and Jennifer met at a marketing conference, but I've been thinking about the timeline. That conference happened just 6 months after Robert died, when the insurance payout became public record. Public record? Life insurance payouts over. A certain amount have to be reported. Anyone doing a background check would know I'd received a substantial settlement. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Dorothy, how did they know to invite you to that conference where they met? What do you mean? Think about it. You live in a small town in Northern California. David was working in Seattle. How did Jennifer, a supposed boutique owner in Seattle, know about your existence and your financial situation before she even met David? I tried to remember the sequence of events, but it was years ago, and I hadn't thought it was important at the time. David said he was attending the conference for his engineering firm. He said he met Jennifer there by chance. But who suggested he attend that particular conference? And why would a boutique owner be at a marketing conference for engineering firms? The questions Patricia was raising made my head spin. If she was right, if Jennifer had deliberately targeted David because of his connection to me, then everything about their relationship was a lie. Their marriage, their children, their entire life together, all of it could have been part of an elaborate con game. The next morning, I was awakened at 6 a.m. by pounding on my front door. Through the peephole, I could see a man in a suit holding what looked like official paperwork. Mrs. Patterson? I'm Deputy Marshal Thompson. I have a court order requiring you to appear for a mental competency evaluation. My hands shook as I looked at the papers. According to the document, Jennifer Brooks had filed a petition claiming that I was suffering from dementia and was being manipulated by outside parties into making false accusations against family members. A judge had ordered an immediate evaluation to determine my capacity to handle my own affairs. I called Margaret Walsh immediately. "This is outrageous," she said after I read her the petition. "They're trying to get you declared incompetent so they can dismiss the criminal charges and take control of your finances. Don't worry, Mrs. Patterson. We're going to fight this aggressively." "But I have to go to the evaluation?" "Yes, but I'm going to be there with you, and we're bringing your medical records and Dr. Williams if necessary." "Dorothy, this is actually good news in a way. They're so desperate to discredit you that they're overplaying their hand." The competency evaluation took place that afternoon at the county courthouse. I was examined by a court-appointed psychologist who put me through a series of cognitive tests, memory exercises, and questions about my daily life and financial decisions. "Mrs. Patterson," the psychologist said after 2 hours of testing, "your cognitive function is not only normal, it's exceptional for someone your age. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning is sound, and you demonstrate clear understanding of complex financial concepts." "So I'm not mentally incompetent?" "Not even close. In fact, I'd say you're more mentally acute than many people decades younger. Whoever filed this petition either has seriously flawed judgment or is acting in bad faith." Margaret smiled grimly. "Doctor, would you be willing to put that assessment in writing for the court?" "Absolutely. And I'll note in my report that this appears to be a frivolous petition filed to discredit a competent adult who is rightfully protecting herself from financial exploitation." That evening, David called again. His voice was desperate, pleading, "Mom, please." Jennifer made a mistake with the competency petition. She was scared and not thinking clearly. "Can't we work this out as a family?" "David, your wife tried to have me declared mentally incompetent to cover up her theft. That's not a mistake. That's calculated cruelty. She's just trying to protect our family. Mom, if she goes to prison, what happens to Sophia and Olivia?" There it was again, using my grandchildren to manipulate me. "David, Jennifer should have thought about that before she decided to steal from me. Mom, I'm begging you, drop the charges. We'll pay back every penny, I promise." "With what money, David? Patricia told me about your bankruptcy, about the house, being underwater. You don't have $73,000 to pay me back." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. "You knew," I said quietly. "You've known all along that you couldn't pay me back." "Mom, that's not—" "David, when you called me 18 months ago crying about losing the house, you already knew you were financially destroyed. You knew there was no way you could ever repay a loan that size. Mom, please. You and Jennifer planned this from the beginning, didn't you? You needed money and you knew I had it, so you came up with a story about a struggling business and temporary hardship. That's not true, isn't it? David, there never was a plan to pay me back. You and Jennifer have been living off my money for 18 months, and when I started asking questions, she tried to have me declared insane. Mom, you're wrong about Jennifer. She loves our family. She loves my money, David. And apparently, so do you. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. I couldn't listen to any more lies, any more manipulation, any more attempts to make me feel guilty for protecting myself from thieves. The next day brought news that would change everything. Detective Chen called with an update on the investigation. That made my stomach drop. "Mrs. Patterson, we've expanded our investigation into your daughter-in-law's background, and we've uncovered some concerning information." "What kind of information?" "Jennifer Morrison, her maiden name, has a criminal history. She was arrested 5 years ago in Oregon for credit card fraud and identity theft. The charges were dropped when she agreed to pay restitution, but Mrs. Patterson, she's done this before." "Done what before?" "Targeted elderly individuals for financial fraud. The Oregon case involved a 78-year-old man who thought Jennifer was helping him manage his finances after his wife died. She stole $42,000 from him over 8 months. I felt like the room was spinning. Are you saying she's a professional con artist? That's exactly what I'm saying. And Mrs. Patterson, there's more. We found evidence that Jennifer researched your background extensively before your son ever met her. She knew about your husband's death, your insurance settlement, your financial situation. This wasn't random. You were specifically targeted. What about David? We're still investigating his level of involvement, but Mrs. Patterson, the timeline, suggests he may have been complicit from the beginning. The marketing conference where they supposedly met? Jennifer paid for David's registration and hotel room. She essentially paid for the opportunity to meet him. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was horrifying. Jennifer hadn't fallen in love with David and then decided to steal from his mother. She had identified me as a target, researched my family, and then orchestrated a meeting with my son to gain access to my money. Detective Chen, how long has she been planning this? Based on what we've found, at least 2 years before she even met David. She's been running variations of this con for years, targeting elderly people who've recently lost spouses and have substantial assets. And David? We found evidence that Jennifer paid off some of David's debts early in their relationship. She essentially bought his cooperation, whether he fully understood what was happening or not. That afternoon, Margaret, Walsh called with more devastating news. Dorothy, Jennifer's attorney has filed a motion claiming that you're a vindictive ex-mother-in-law who's making false accusations because you disapprove of your son's marriage. They're arguing that the joint account was a gift, not a loan, and that you have no right to restrict Jennifer's access to funds you voluntarily provided. A gift? I have documentation showing it was specifically for business expenses. I know, and we'll fight that argument. But Dorothy, they're also claiming that your son and daughter-in-law have been supporting you financially, not the other way around. That's insane. I've been completely self-sufficient since Robert died. They've filed bank records showing transfers from David's account to yours over the past year. I was confused. What transfers? David has never sent me money. Small amounts, $50 here, $100 there. They're claiming these were assistance payments to help with your living expenses. It took me a moment to realize what had happened. Those weren't gifts to me. Those were transfers I made to David and Jennifer that they then sent back to make it look like they were supporting me. Can you prove that? The amounts match exactly with transfers I made to them for the twins. Birthday gifts and Christmas presents. I would send money to David's account and he would use it to buy gifts for the girls, then send back any leftover funds. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Dorothy, they've been documenting fake evidence of financial support to create a paper, trails suggesting they were taking care of you, not stealing from you. How is that possible? It's sophisticated financial manipulation. They created a false narrative where you're the dependent elderly parent being cared for by your generous children rather than the victim of theft. If a jury believes that story, they might see your accusations as the confused complaints of an ungrateful mother. I felt overwhelmed by the complexity of Jennifer's deception. She hadn't just stolen my money. She had been systematically building a defense against eventual discovery, creating false evidence and manipulating records to support a completely fabricated version of events. Margaret, what are our chances? Good, but this is going to be a fight. Jennifer Brooks is not some amateur who got greedy. She's a professional con artist who's been planning this for years. She's prepared for legal challenges. What do we do? We gather every piece of evidence we can find. We document every lie, every manipulation, every false claim. And Dorothy, we prepare for the possibility that this could get much worse before it gets better. That evening, as I sat in my living room surrounded by boxes of financial documents and legal papers, I realized something profound had happened to me over the past week. A week ago, I had been a naive 70-year-old woman who trusted people because they were family. Tonight, I was someone who understood that trust had to be earned, not given automatically based on blood relations or marriage certificates. Jennifer had tried to destroy me financially and emotionally. She had attempted to have me declared mentally incompetent. She had manipulated my son into betraying me. She had stolen not just my money, but my faith in family itself. But she had also awakened something in me that I hadn't known existed. The fighter I could have been all along if I hadn't been so afraid of conflict, so desperate to keep everyone happy, so willing to sacrifice my own well-being for the illusion of family harmony. Jennifer thought she was dealing with a typical elderly victim, isolated, vulnerable, easily intimidated. She had no idea that her cruelty had transformed me into someone who would fight back with everything I had. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity and determination I hadn't felt in years. I was going to stop Jennifer Brooks, not just for myself, but for every elderly person she might target in the future. And if my son chose to stand with a criminal instead of his mother, then he would learn that some choices have permanent consequences. The war was escalating, but I was no longer fighting just to recover my money. I was fighting to expose a predator and protect other families from the devastation she had brought to mine. Jennifer had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated exactly how dangerous a 70-year-old woman with nothing left to lose could be. She was about to find out. 3 weeks after Jennifer's failed competency hearing, I executed the move that would end her reign of financial terror once and for all. But first, she made one last desperate attempt to destroy me that revealed the true depths of her evil. I was in my garden early Monday morning, tending to the roses Robert had planted years ago, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard a small, frightened voice that made my heart stop. "Grandma Dorothy?" It was Sophia, and she was crying. "Sophia, sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you calling me?" "Mommy said I had to call you and tell you something, but I don't want to," she sobbed. "She said if I don't do it, Daddy will go to jail and it will be your fault." My blood turned to ice. Jennifer was using my 8-year-old granddaughter as a weapon against me. "Sophia, honey, you don't have to say anything you don't want to say. Can you put Daddy on the phone?" "He's not here. Mommy said he doesn't know about this call." "Grandma, I'm scared. Mommy has been yelling a lot, and she said you're trying to hurt our family." "Sophia, listen to me very carefully. Your daddy is not going to jail because of me, and you don't have to make any phone calls you don't want to make. Where's your sister?" "Olivia is at school. I'm sick today, so I'm home with Mommy. But Grandma, Mommy said I have to tell you that you hurt me when you visited for your birthday. She said I have to say you pushed me and said mean things." I felt sick. Jennifer was coaching my granddaughter to lie about me, trying to create evidence of elder abuse by turning the victim narrative around. "Sophia, did I hurt you when I visited?" "No." "Grandma, you were nice to me. You gave us pretty dresses and we went to see the ocean animals. But Mommy said if I don't say you hurt me, the police will take Daddy away forever." "Sophia? Honey, that's not true. The police are not going to take your daddy away because of anything you say or don't say. You never have to lie for anyone, not even Mommy." But she said, "I know what Mommy said. But sometimes grown-ups say things when they're scared that aren't true. Sophia, I need you to do something for me. Can you hang up this phone and go to your room until Daddy comes home?" "Okay, Grandma. But are you mad at me?" "I could never be mad at you, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. I love you very much." After I hung up, I immediately called Detective Chen and Margaret Walsh. What Jennifer had just done wasn't just morally reprehensible, it was criminal witness tampering involving a minor. "Mrs. Patterson, this gives us grounds for immediate arrest," Detective Chen said. "Coaching a child to make false allegations of abuse is a serious felony, especially when it's done to obstruct a criminal investigation." "What about my granddaughter?" "I'm worried about what Jennifer might do to her for not following through with the lie. We're going to get emergency custody orders for both children. Based on what you've recorded, they're not safe with Jennifer right now." Within 4 hours, Seattle police had arrested Jennifer Brooks at her home on charges of witness tampering, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice, in addition to the existing fraud and elder abuse charges. David, who apparently knew nothing about Jennifer's attempt to use Sophia as a false witness, was devastated. But the most satisfying moment came when Detective Chen called me that evening with news that made all the pain and betrayal worth it. "Mrs. Patterson, when we searched Jennifer's home computer, we found something extraordinary. She kept detailed records of her entire operation, not just her theft from you, but evidence of at least 12 other elderly victims across 3 states. 12 other victims? She kept spreadsheets with their names, addresses, financial information, and detailed plans for how to manipulate each one. Mrs. Patterson, your case is going to bring down an entire criminal enterprise. What about the other victims? We're contacting law enforcement in Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona. Jennifer Brooks has been running this con for over 8 years, and the total amount stolen appears to be over $400,000. I sat in my kitchen, absorbing the magnitude of what Jennifer had been doing. I wasn't just one victim of a greedy daughter-in-law. I was one victim of a professional predator who had been destroying elderly people's lives for nearly a decade. Detective Chen, what happens to my grandchildren? David has been granted temporary custody, but he'll need to prove he wasn't complicit in Jennifer's crimes. The children are safe with him for now, and Child Protective Services is providing counseling to help them process what their mother did. 2 days later, I received a call that I'd been both hoping for and dreading. It was David, and he sounded completely broken. "Mom, I need to apologize to you for things I didn't even know I was doing." "What do you mean?" "The police showed me everything Jennifer had on her computer. Mom, she manipulated me from the day we met. She paid off my debts, got me to call you for money, coached me on what to say to make you feel guilty. I thought I was saving my family, but I was helping her rob you." I could hear him crying, and despite everything that had happened, my heart broke for him. "David, how much did you really know?" I knew there was no boutique. I knew Jennifer didn't actually work, but she convinced me that the money was going to family expenses and that we'd pay you back when my next promotion came through. She made me believe that you wanted to help us, and that questioning the details would hurt your feelings. What about the false evidence? The transfers that made it look like you were supporting me? I didn't know she was doing that. She handled all our finances. When she told me to send you money for gifts, I thought it was just normal family stuff. I had no idea she was creating fake evidence. David's voice was hollow, defeated. "Mom, I've been married to a stranger for 7 years. Everything about our relationship was a lie. She married me to get to you. David, what are you going to do now?" "I'm filing for divorce. And Mom, I want to testify against her. I want to help you get justice for what she did to you and all those other people. What about the girls? They're seeing counselors to help them understand that Mommy made very bad choices, but that it's not their fault. They ask about you every day. They want to see their Grandma Dorothy." I closed my eyes, feeling tears of relief and sadness. "David, they can see me anytime you think it's appropriate. They're innocent in all this." "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think you can ever forgive me? I know I don't deserve it, but the girls need their grandmother, and I need my mother." I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty. But I also thought about the David I'd raised, the little boy who used to call me when he had nightmares, the young man who'd cried when his father died. David, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. But yes, I think I can forgive you. You were manipulated by a professional criminal. That doesn't excuse your choices, but it explains them. Thank you, Mom. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try. We'll figure it out together. But David, There are going to be conditions. You're going to need therapy to understand how you were manipulated so it never happens again. And you're going to need to rebuild trust through actions, not just words. I'll do whatever it takes. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Jennifer Brooks be sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for elder abuse, fraud, and racketeering. The judge was particularly harsh in her sentencing remarks. Ms. Brooks, you have systematically targeted some of our most vulnerable citizens, elderly people who were grieving, isolated, and trusting. You didn't just steal their money, you stole their faith in family, their sense of security, and their ability to trust others. The damage you've caused goes far beyond financial harm. Jennifer stood stone-faced through the sentencing, showing no remorse, no acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused. As she was led away in handcuffs, she looked directly at me with an expression of pure hatred. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just the quiet peace that comes from seeing justice served. But the real resolution came 6 months later, when I was hosting Sophia and Olivia for a weekend at my cottage. We were making cookies in the kitchen when Sophia asked me a question that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Grandma Dorothy, why did Mommy do bad things to you? I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes, sweetheart, people make very bad choices because they care more about money than they care about hurting other people. But your family. Families are supposed to love each other. Real families do love each other, Sophia. But just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they're real family. Real family are the people who take care of you, protect you, and love you even when it's hard. Olivia looked up from her cookie dough. Like Daddy? He said he's sorry he didn't protect you from Mommy. Yes, like Daddy. He made mistakes, but he's working very hard to make better choices now. Are you our real family, Grandma? I will always be your real family, girls. No matter what happens, no matter how far away you are, you can always count on me to love you and protect you. That evening, after the girls were asleep in the guest room, David and I sat on the porch watching the sunset over the Pacific. He'd been coming to these weekend visits for 3 months, slowly rebuilding our relationship through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. Mom, I got the final paperwork today, he said quietly. The restitution came through. You're getting back $127,000, the original amount plus interest and damages. What about the other victims? They're getting their money back too. Jennifer had hidden assets in accounts across 3 states, and the federal prosecutors froze everything. Turns out she was actually pretty wealthy from years of stealing from elderly people. I nodded, but the money had stopped being the most important thing months ago. David, what have you learned from all this? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. I learned that I was so afraid of conflict, so desperate to keep everyone happy, that I let myself be used to hurt the person I should have been protecting. I learned that love without respect isn't really love at all. And what are you going to do differently? I'm going to teach the girls that real family doesn't manipulate or use each other. I'm going to show them what healthy relationships look like. And Mom, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you matter, that you're valued, and that you never have to question whether your family loves you. David, you don't have to spend your life making up for this. Yes, I do. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Mom, you saved not just yourself when you fought back against Jennifer, you saved me and the girls too. If you hadn't exposed her, she would have eventually destroyed all of us. As we sat there in the gathering dusk, I reflected on the year that had changed everything. 12 months ago, I had been a naive woman who thought family meant accepting any treatment people chose to give me. I had been so afraid of being alone that I had allowed myself to be exploited, manipulated, and abused. But Jennifer's cruelty had awakened something in me that I'd never known existed. the strength to demand respect, the courage to fight back, and the wisdom to know the difference between real love and manipulation. The money I'd recovered was substantial, but the real treasure was the relationship I'd rebuilt with David and the one I was building with my granddaughters. These weren't relationships based on guilt, obligation, or financial dependency. They were based on genuine love, respect, and choice. 6 months later, I sold my cottage in Mendocino and moved to Seattle to be closer to David and the girls. Not because they needed me to take care of them, and not because I needed them to take care of me, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company and wanted to be a real family. I bought a small house 10 minutes from David's new apartment. Close, enough to be involved in the girls' daily lives, far enough to maintain our independence. Sophia and Olivia came for dinner twice a week and spent every other weekend with me. We talked openly about what had happened with their mother, about how to recognize manipulation, and about what real love looks like. David had individual therapy for a year to understand how he'd been manipulated and to develop the skills to recognize and resist emotional exploitation. We also did family therapy together, working through the betrayal and rebuilding trust through honest communication and consistent actions. The most healing moment came almost 2 years after Jennifer's arrest, when Sophia presented me with a school project she'd done about heroes. She'd written about me, calling me the grandmother who was brave enough to stop the bad people. Grandma Dorothy, she said as I read her essay. My teacher said heroes are people who do the right thing, even when it's scary. Were you scared when you fought against Mommy? Yes, sweetheart, I was terrified. But sometimes being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. I want to be brave like you when I grow up. You already are brave, Sophia. You were brave when you called to tell me about what Mommy wanted you to say. You chose to tell the truth even when you were scared. Olivia looked up from her homework. Grandma, will you teach us how to be strong like you? I'll teach you that you never have to accept being treated badly just to keep the peace. I'll teach you that real family lifts you up, doesn't tear you down. And I'll teach you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Today, at 72, I'm living a life I couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. I volunteer with an organization that helps elderly victims of financial abuse. I speak at conferences about recognizing and preventing elder exploitation. I've helped dozens of people who found themselves in situations similar to mine. But most importantly, I've learned that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving authentically, and refusing to let other people's cruelty make you cruel in return. Jennifer Brooks is serving her 15-year sentence and will likely face additional charges as more victims come forward. She still shows no remorse, still claims she was helping families by redistributing wealth more efficiently. David has rebuilt his life from the ground up. He's debt-free, emotionally, healthy, and raising 2 daughters who understand the difference between love and manipulation. He still apologizes sometimes for what happened, but I tell him the same thing every time. We can't change the past, but we can choose what we do with the future. And me? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm surrounded by people who choose to love me, not because they need something from me, but because they genuinely enjoy my company. I have a relationship with my granddaughters that's based on mutual respect and affection. I have a son who has learned to value integrity over convenience. Most importantly, I have something I didn't have 3 years ago: unshakable confidence in my own worth. I know that I deserve to be treated with respect. I know that love without respect isn't love at all. And I know that it's never too late to stop accepting less than you deserve. Jennifer thought she was teaching me that I was a useless burden who had to buy love with money. Instead, she taught me that I was a strong woman who refused to be anyone's victim. The final irony is that by trying to isolate me and make me feel worthless, Jennifer actually gave me the greatest gift of my life: the knowledge that I was capable of fighting for myself and winning. 3 years ago, If you had told me that my 70th birthday would end with my daughter-in-law calling me a useless burden, I would have been devastated. If you had told me that the same woman would try to have me declared mentally incompetent and coach my granddaughter to lie about me, I would have thought it was the end of my world. But if you had told me that I would emerge from that nightmare, stronger, wiser, and more respected than ever before, surrounded by people who genuinely love and value me, I would have thought you were telling fairy tales. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you. Sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up being the ones who set you free. And sometimes, at 70 years old, you discover that you're just getting started. Jennifer Brooks thought she was dealing with a helpless old woman who would quietly accept whatever treatment she chose to dish out. She learned too late that she had awakened a force she was completely unprepared to handle. The moral of this story isn't about revenge or getting even. It's about knowing your worth, demanding respect, and understanding that real family doesn't exploit or manipulate. It protects and nurtures. At 72, I'm living proof that it's never too late to refuse to be anyone's victim, and that the best way to honor your own life is to insist on being treated with the dignity you deserve. The account is no longer frozen, because there's no one left who needs to steal from it. The only people who have access to my money now are people who would never abuse that trust, and that, more than any amount of money recovered or any prison sentence served, is the real victory. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Jennifer Brooks be sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for elder abuse, fraud, and racketeering. The judge was particularly harsh in her sentencing remarks. Ms. Brooks, you have systematically targeted some of our most vulnerable citizens, elderly people who were grieving, isolated, and trusting. You didn't just steal their money, you stole their faith in family, their sense of security, and their ability to trust others. The damage you've caused goes far beyond financial harm. Jennifer stood stone-faced through the sentencing, showing no remorse, no acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused. As she was led away in handcuffs, she looked directly at me with an expression of pure hatred. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just the quiet peace that comes from seeing justice served. But the real resolution came 6 months later, when I was hosting Sophia and Olivia for a weekend at my cottage. We were making cookies in the kitchen when Sophia asked me a question that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Grandma Dorothy, why did Mommy do bad things to you? I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes, sweetheart, people make very bad choices because they care more about money than they care about hurting other people. But your family. Families are supposed to love each other. Real families do love each other, Sophia. But just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they're real family. Real family are the people who take care of you, protect you, and love you even when it's hard. Olivia looked up from her cookie dough. Like Daddy? He said he's sorry he didn't protect you from Mommy. Yes, like Daddy. He made mistakes, but he's working very hard to make better choices now. Are you our real family, Grandma? I will always be your real family, girls. No matter what happens, no matter how far away you are, you can always count on me to love you and protect you. That evening, after the girls were asleep in the guest room, David and I sat on the porch watching the sunset over the Pacific. He'd been coming to these weekend visits for 6 months, slowly rebuilding our relationship through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. Mom, I got the final paperwork today, he said quietly. The restitution came through. You're getting back $127,000, the original amount plus interest and damages. What about the other victims? They're getting their money back too. Jennifer had hidden assets and accounts across 3 states, and the federal prosecutors froze everything. Turns out she was actually pretty wealthy from years of stealing from elderly people. I nodded, but the money had stopped being the most important thing months ago. David, What have you learned from all this?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. I learned that I was so afraid of conflict, so desperate to keep everyone happy, that I let myself be used to hurt the person I should have been protecting. I learned that love without respect isn't really love at all. And what are you going to do differently? I'm going to teach the girls that real family doesn't manipulate or use each other. I'm going to show them what healthy relationships look like. And Mom, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you matter, that you're valued, and that you never have to question whether your family loves you. David, you don't have to spend your life making up for this. Yes, I do, not because I have to, but because I want to. Mom, you saved not just yourself when you fought back against Jennifer. You saved me and the girls too. If you hadn't exposed her, she would have eventually destroyed all of us. As we sat there in the gathering dusk, I reflected on the year that had changed everything. 18 months ago, I had been a naive woman who thought family meant accepting any treatment people chose to give me. I had been so afraid of being alone that I had allowed myself to be exploited, manipulated, and abused. But Jennifer's cruelty had awakened something in me that I'd never known existed. The strength to demand respect, the courage to fight back, and the wisdom to know the difference between real love and manipulation. The money I'd recovered was substantial, but the real treasure was the relationship I'd rebuilt with David and the one I was building with my granddaughters. These weren't relationships based on guilt, obligation, or financial dependency. They were based on genuine love, respect, and choice. A year later, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I sold my cottage in Mendocino and moved to Seattle to be closer to David and the girls. Not because they needed me to take care of them, and not because I needed them to take care of me, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company and wanted to be a real family. I bought a small house 10 minutes from David's new apartment, close enough to be involved in the girls' daily lives, far enough to maintain our independence. Sophia and Olivia came for dinner twice a week and spent every other weekend with me. We talked openly about what had happened with their mother, about how to recognize manipulation, and about what real love looks like. David had individual therapy for a year to understand how he'd been manipulated and to develop the skills to recognize and resist emotional exploitation. We also did family therapy together, working through the betrayal and rebuilding trust through honest communication and consistent actions. The most healing moment came almost 2 years after Jennifer's arrest, when Sophia presented me with a school project she'd done about heroes. She'd written about me, calling me the grandmother who was brave enough to stop the bad people. "Grandma Dorothy," she said as I read her essay, "my teacher said heroes are people who do the right thing, even when it's scary. Were you scared when you fought against Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart, I was terrified. But sometimes being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared." I want to be brave like you when I grow up. You already are brave, Sophia. You were brave when you called to tell me about what Mommy wanted you to say. You chose to tell the truth even when you were scared. Olivia looked up from her homework. "Grandma, will you teach us how to be strong like you? I'll teach you that you never have to accept being treated badly just to keep the peace. I'll teach you that real family lifts you up, doesn't tear you down. And I'll teach you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself." But perhaps the most unexpected development came 3 years after Jennifer's conviction. I had started volunteering with an organization that helps elderly victims of financial abuse, sharing my story at conferences and workshops. After one particularly well-received presentation in San Francisco, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Patterson, thank you for saving my mother. I'm sorry, I don't understand. My name is Linda Martinez. Patricia Martinez in Phoenix. She was one of Jennifer Brooks's victims. After your case broke, my mother found the courage to come forward about what had happened to her. She got her money back, and more importantly, she learned that what happened to her wasn't her fault. How is your mother doing now? She's wonderful. Strong, confident, happy. She says listening to your story taught her that being 75 doesn't mean you have to accept being a victim. She's become an advocate too. She speaks at senior centers about financial scams. Over the next hour, Linda told me about her mother's transformation from a ashamed, isolated victim to a powerful advocate for elder protection. Patricia had used her restitution money to start a support group for elderly fraud victims and had helped expose 2 other financial predators in the Bandian, Phoenix area. Mrs. Patterson, your courage created a ripple effect. Because you fought back, my mother fought back. Because my mother fought back, 3 other families have been saved from similar scams. You didn't just save yourself, you started a movement. As I drove home from that conference, I realized that Jennifer's cruelty had done something she never intended. It had created an army of elderly advocates who refused to be silent victims. Every person who heard my story and found the courage to stand up for themselves was a victory Jennifer couldn't take away. Today, at 74, I'm living a life I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. I speak regularly about elder abuse prevention. I mentor other seniors who've been financially exploited, and I've helped establish new laws in California to better protect elderly people from family financial abuse. But most importantly, I'm surrounded by people who choose to love me, not because they need something from me, but because they genuinely enjoy my company. I have a relationship with my granddaughters that's based on mutual respect and affection. I have a son who has learned to value integrity over convenience. Sophia, now 13, recently told me she wants to become a lawyer specializing in protecting elderly people. Grandma, you showed me that when bad people hurt someone, good people have to fight back. Olivia, 13 as well, has inherited my love of gardening and spends hours with me in my backyard, learning to grow vegetables and flowers. Grandma Dorothy, she said recently, I'm glad Mommy went to prison because now I know what a real grandmother is supposed to be like. David has rebuilt his life from the ground up. He's debt-free, emotionally healthy, and raising 2 daughters who understand the difference between love and manipulation. He still apologizes sometimes for what happened, but I tell him the same thing every time. We can't change the past, but we can choose what we do with the future. Last month on my 74th birthday, 5 years exactly since that devastating night, when Jennifer called me a useless burden, David surprised me with a party. But this wasn't like that long-ago birthday that ended in tears and betrayal. This party was filled with genuine friends, the other fraud survivors I work with, neighbors who've become dear friends, my book club members, and Patricia Martinez, who flew in from Phoenix just to celebrate with me. As we sat around my dining room table sharing stories and laughter, Sophia raised her glass of sparkling cider and made a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To Grandma Dorothy, who taught us that family isn't about blood, it's about love, respect, and protection, and who showed us that it's never too late to fight for what's right. Everyone cheered, and I looked around the table at these people who had chosen to be part of my life. This was real family, people who supported each other, celebrated each other's victories, and stood together against those who would harm us. Jennifer Brooks is still serving her sentence, and based on additional charges that have been filed, she'll likely never see freedom again. She still maintains her innocence, still claims she was helping families manage their resources more efficiently. But her legacy isn't the money she stole or the families she destroyed. Her legacy is the movement she inadvertently created. Hundreds of elderly people who refuse to suffer in silence, who support each other, and who work tirelessly to prevent other families from experiencing the devastation we survived. The final. Irony is that by trying to isolate me and make me feel worthless, Jennifer actually gave me the greatest gift of my life, the knowledge that I was capable of fighting for myself and winning, and the understanding that real strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from standing up for what's right regardless of the cost. 5 years ago, if you had told me that my 70th birthday would end with my daughter-in-law calling me a useless burden, I would have been devastated. If you had told me that the same woman would try to have me declared mentally incompetent and coach my granddaughter to lie about me, I would have thought it was the end of my world. But if you had told me that I would emerge from that nightmare, stronger, wiser, and more respected than ever before, surrounded by people who genuinely love and value me, I would have thought you were telling fairy tales. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you. Sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up being the ones who set you free. And sometimes, at 70 years old, you discover that you're just getting started. Jennifer Brooks thought she was dealing with a helpless old woman who would quietly accept whatever treatment she chose to dish out. She learned too late that she had awakened a force she was completely unprepared to handle. The moral of this story isn't about revenge or getting even. It's about knowing your worth, demanding respect, and understanding that real family doesn't exploit or manipulate. It protects and nurtures. At 74, I'm living proof that it's never too late to refuse to be anyone's victim, and that the best way to honor your own life is to insist on being treated with the dignity you deserve. The bank account is no longer frozen because there's no one left who needs to steal from it. The only people who have access to my money now are people who would never abuse that trust, and that, more than any amount of money recovered or any prison sentence served, is the real victory. But perhaps the greatest victory of all is the letter I received last week from a woman in Texas named Margaret Thompson, one of Jennifer's other victims. Dear Mrs. Patterson, you don't know me, but your courage saved my life. When I heard your story on the news, I realized that what my stepson's girlfriend had done to me wasn't my fault, wasn't something to be ashamed of, and wasn't something I had to accept. I hired a lawyer, pressed charges, and got my money back. But more than that, I got my self-respect back. I learned that being 82 doesn't mean I have to be anyone's victim. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to fight back. Thank you for proving that one person's courage can light the way for others. Because of you, I'm not just surviving. I'm thriving with love and gratitude. Margaret Thompson P.S. My stepson apologized and cut all ties with the woman who stole from me. He's in therapy now, learning how he was manipulated. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, based on respect instead of guilt. Sound familiar? As I finished reading Margaret's letter, sitting in my sunny kitchen with Sophia and Olivia doing homework at my table, I smiled. Jennifer had thought she was destroying one lonely old woman's life. Instead, she had started a revolution. Every elderly person who refuses to be a victim, every family that rebuilds based on love instead of manipulation, every predator who gets caught because people like us refuse to stay silent. All of it traces back to one 70-year-old woman who decided she'd had enough. Jennifer called me a useless burden. But the truth is, I'm one of the most useful people I know. I use my experience to protect others. I use my voice to speak for those who haven't found theirs yet. I use my story to show people that it's never too late to take control of your life. At 74, I'm just getting started, and that's the most beautiful revenge of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.